back to the Geary Theory. I'm your host, Lauren Geary, and today we're talking to Dr. Christina Parks. Now, if you missed my episode with her, we discussed vaccines and SIDS way back. She was one of my first episodes. So you want to go back and listen to that and just kind of recap who she is. So she's the founder of VITA, which stands for Vaccine Injury Teaching Alliance. I'm going to put the website that she has created here, where all her resources and all her research for numerous different topics are available, not just vaccines. She covers things like kitchen toxins with things you cook with or bake with, and then things like mold in your house and even Wi-Fi, which is a scary one to learn, like how toxic Wi-Fi could be. But anyway, so if you're going down the crunchy path, you want to start with her website because she simplified it, and that way you can just kind of pick one thing at a time you want to work on and go there for those resources. So when it comes to vaccines, she's a cellular microbiologist, so she knows what she's talking about, and she's also spoken and done many podcasts. She knows what she's talking about when it comes to vaccines. So I'm going down this path of learning about the dangers of the COVID shot and the effects of the COVID shot on our bodies. I was hearing, like I think we all have, is this, you need to do a spike protein detox. I'm like, I don't even know what a spike protein is. Like, if you're not in the medical, I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, is this in our body naturally? Is there too many of them and the COVID shots injected us with them? I have no idea. I just know that COVID shot, do a detox. Should everybody do a detox? Should we assume that we all need a detox? Is there a concern there? So I had to ask her, I'm like, can you explain what even a spike protein is and why it's related to the COVID vaccine? And should we all do it? Should only vaccinated people do it? Should everybody that's been vaccinated do it? Like, should we even check if we need to do it? So I had no idea. And I'm like, how do you even detox? And we don't really get into this, how to actually do a detox, because her website has a few different methods that she recommends. There are some methods she would not recommend, but her website kind of outlays all that there. But we get into what a spike protein is and the relationship, the COVID shot. And then I asked her, which I thought when I asked her this, I didn't even know they were related, but these two topics were more related than I realized. But this idea of vaccine shedding, because I'm on these Facebook groups for mothers that are kind of crunchy like me, and they're like, if my kid, they don't vaccinate their kids, so they're like, should my kid not be around other recently vaccinated kids or family members, because I don't want my kid to get vaccinated through vaccine shedding, which is just kind of like the kid standing next to the person that's been vaccinated, they get somehow vaccinated. I'm like, this is insane, because I'm not going to go around and ask all the people that we do play dates with and family members like, hey, let me know when you've been vaccinated or they had their wellness visit, because we need to avoid your family and those kids or whatever for so many days. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm like crunchy, but I'm not like weird, right? So I was grateful to ask her that question, because we get into it. So I'm not going to ruin it too much, but essentially it's again, this vaccine shedding only really is related to the COVID vaccine, which put my mind at ease. But but then the idea goes back to, so are people getting vaccinated just from being around people that are vaccinated, even though they weren't? It's like, so should everybody that exists do a detox? It's insane. So last thing I want to say is everything said in here is not medical advice. It is just opinion. It is just discussion. Any decisions that you want to make with your health, you need to make between you and a doctor. So take the information we're discussing here, the opinions we're discussing here, go to your doctor and have an honest conversation with them. And that's where you want to make your medical decisions. Again, no medical advice, just opinion. So with that being said, let's get into it. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Christina Parks. I am so glad to have you back. We have been chatting since our last interview, and I just following you continuously in the work you're doing. And I'm so excited to get this conversation started today, because we're talking about spike protein levels. That's going to be the focus of our discussion today. And the reason it's come up is because the more I deep dive into the COVID vaccine and the effects of the COVID vaccine causing spike protein levels, and then I hear, and I'm just new to all this, so that's where you come in, is spike protein levels are basically, because of this high spike protein levels, we're having so many health issues. So with that being said, what even is a spike protein? What does this even mean?
Right. And I thank you for welcoming this conversation. I spend so much time in the deep science that I think sometimes we don't back up and scaffold people into a better understanding. So what is the spike protein? It's a protein that's on the outside of the virus. I hear your Your chickens in the
Yeah, I got a
background.
couple of those chickens. Won't be quiet, so they'll just be background noise.
Yeah.
Our little farm.
That's fun. So on the outside of the virus, there's these spike proteins, and they actually help it to get into cells to infect the cells. And the thing is, it's the spike protein that is responsible for almost all the deleterious effects of the COVID virus. Um, when you look at the spike protein itself, when you look at the genetic sequence for it, and many of us were looking for this data right away because the truth is Dr. Shizing Li from the Wuhan Institute and Dr. Ralph Barrick from University of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, both studied these bat coronaviruses and were trying to get them to infect human lung cells. And one of the things they were doing was playing with doing recombinant forms of this spike protein. And there's all the scientific studies to show they were doing this. And so when this came out, we're like, you're trying to tell us this is from the wild? We don't believe you. We've been trying to engineer this bat coronavirus to infect human lung cells. And one of the ways they were doing it were by changing at the genetic level the spike protein. They were changing the DNA sequence so that when the virus made itself, the spike protein was engineered. One of the things they did was they put HIV motifs in it, which would make it more inflammatory. And they changed something called a furin cleavage site. You don't need to know what that means, but when they did it, it made it more likely to bind to receptors, specifically the ACE2 receptors, but now we know it binds to many receptors on human cells and to get inside human lung cells. It made it more likely to infect human lung cells. So one of the biggest things that happened when they decided to roll out the vaccines is many of us as molecular biologists said, okay, you've got this whole spike protein that's on the outside of the virus. All you need to do is find something that binds, like if you have this spike protein and it's going to bind the cell and go in, if you have something that binds it right here and blocks it, then it can't get in, right? So we don't need to, we could just have like something, an antibody against just part of the spike protein. It doesn't have to be against all of it. But every single vaccine coded for the entire spike protein. The entire spike protein that gets inside your cells, and we'll talk about all the things it does, and does just it's just like a bomb, right?
Okay.
Every single one of them. They could have just coded for part of the spike protein to develop antibodies against that part to prevent it from binding and going in your cells. But instead, they all coded for the entire spike protein that is really inflammatory, that's cancer causing, that destroys your energy production, that has all these deleterious effects. All four of them, AstraZeneca, J&J, Pfizer, and Moderna, all put a genetic sequence in your cells that makes your cells make the spike protein. Now, the spike protein from the vaccine is very slightly different from that of the actual virus, but both of them have essentially kind of the same effects on cells. So when you're infected with the virus, your body is going to make more virus, and that virus is going to have spike protein on the outside of it, and that's going to be problematic for your body. But when you were injected with genetic material coding for the spike protein, you are turning your body cells into a manufacturing plant for a foreign, toxic, viral protein. And any of your cells making that are going to be attacked and tried to be destroyed by your immune system.
So this is a spike protein. And so before we get in, okay, so I think I'm understanding. So why is it that they did the entire spike protein? Did they have to do that? Like, is there any argument that can be made that was necessary? Okay, so it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear that there were many vaccinologists, people who were pro-vaccine, who were shouting from the rooftops, but these are scientists that nobody knows, right? They're not on NBC, that were saying, why don't you just make it to the receptor binding domain? And you don't need to know the details of that, but there were many, many scientists and vaccinologists asking, why are you using the full length spike protein? It makes absolutely no sense. And in general, like when you bring a product to market, a lot of times you want to be variability. So like if they're doing the full length spike protein, I might go, and for my company, I think that our just taking a segment of it is going to be safer. So I'm going to put out this vaccine, and if we have a better safety profile, more people are going to take ours, right? So you would think that each of them would do it slightly differently in order to, because they thought that their version of the vaccine is going to be better and better tolerated, more effective, whatever it is. But they all put it basically exactly the same thing, which really feeds into like the whole conspiracy idea that the vaccine is the bioweapon, not the virus itself.
Yeah, so that was going to be my question. You already answered it. Is that this spike protein level issue isn't coming just from one version of the COVID vaccine? It's coming from all COVID vaccines, if I'm understanding that right. And that doesn't necessarily apply to other vaccines.
Right.
Is that right?
So
Okay.
this
is solely to COVID.
Very specific to the COVID-19 vaccines.
Wow. So that does go into the conspiracy level, that this spike protein isn't something if you get like a hepatitis B vaccine or something else. It's only COVID vaccines, and it was
I
each
don't want
brand.
to be that specific because there are some things to do with like the RSV vaccine, but we're just going to try to keep it clear for this. So the simple answer is yes. I'm not going to get into the weeds with other things, but yes.
Okay. Sounds good.
COVID-19 vaccine.
Well, that's really interesting. So that's why when we kind of simplify it and we're talking to people, like if you had the COVID vaccine, check your spike protein levels. It's not like we don't have to get into what brand, what this. It was unanimous that this all had this spike protein level issue. So actually, do spike proteins occur naturally in the body, or is this completely synthetic?
Okay, so again, there are some other viruses that do have spike-like proteins, but the incidence is pretty low. So because of the advent of the virus and the vaccines, that is going to totally eclipse anything else that might be going on there. So, but I do want to be clear that if you have a subclinical gut infection with COVID, and we do know that this infects the bacteria in the gut and makes spike protein, makes new virus, and infects the actual gut cells of your intestines. So a concern is that many people may have a subclinical infection in their gut after COVID. So you might have COVID again for like the fourth time or whatever. It may not even be severe, but you think you're better, but you may still be making spike protein in your gut that then actually going through your body and causing different problems. And your body will actually like package it in little vesicles and send it different places. And so it's weird, and we know it's getting to the brain in people. We know that people 2 years post-COVID, not vaccinated, but just post-COVID, have cells in their brain that are harboring spike protein. And once the cells, I know I'm flashing a little bit, it's kind of freaking me out, but I don't know.
You're fine.
We're just going to have to tolerate it. Once your cells, whether in your brain or your liver or whatever, are making the spike protein, now that generally is from the vaccine, but it could be, just residual spike protein that was packaged and sent to your cells that took it up. Once the cells have spike protein inside of them, the cells don't want to die. They're aberrant, so they should actually signal like you've got some problems, it's time for you to go. But they don't die, and they start pumping out all of these inflammatory signaling molecules, which is going to cause inflammation in your brain or any other organs where that spike protein is inside your cells.
Okay. So I was also learning that apparently when they do, I think it's blood work, if I'm understanding this correctly, that people that have had the COVID shot, that a nurse or whoever's looking at their blood work can tell based on their spike protein levels whether or not they had a vaccine. So I don't know what the numbers are, but I was hearing, and maybe this was a number that I was throwing around, but if you didn't have a vaccine, your spike protein levels are very low, like maybe in the 200s. And then I saw that if you did have the vaccine, it could be like 25,000. So I know these are like words. I just came across it. Is this like, are the numbers for the unvaccinated versus the vaccinated, are they that extreme of a difference in spike protein levels?
Okay, so you made some generalizations, so let's clarify.
Okay. Yeah.
So first of all, there are very few people actually measuring the level of spike protein, right? I do know Dr. Robin Rose has looked at some of that. What most clinicians are measuring are antibody levels. So your antibody levels, like let's say you have the flu. After you have the flu, if we measure your antibody levels, they're going to be high to indicate you just had an infection. So it means the body has seen this. So your antibody levels to spike protein means your body is continually seeing the spike protein, right? Okay. Because after time, your antibody levels will actually drop off. So if your antibody levels are still high, like you might measure them, and okay, so if you just had COVID again, your antibody levels might be high. But 3 months afterwards, if they're still high, that indicates several things. One, maybe you have a subclinical gut infection, right? Let's say you've never been vaccinated. So you could have post-COVID syndrome. Your body is responding to spike protein. So that means it's probably making it.
Okay.
or you were vaccinated and your body is still making the spike protein, or the spike protein is still circulating in your body and your body is still trying
Mm,
to attack and clear it. So those antibody means that your body is still trying to attack and clear something that it cannot get on top of, right?
okay. And
So
so that's where it's like someone 4 years later can have these high, your body's still in this defensive mode
yes,
for
and
COVID.
that's going to
Okay.
have, and that's going to this going to mean your immune system is chronically active, your body's
Mm,
chronically inflamed. You're going through things like vitamin C and zinc and other anti-inflammatory vitamin type things really, really quickly because your body is still in attack mode. What
wow.
then happens is your body is still trying to attack the spike protein. And finally, your immune system says, okay, stop. Everybody just stop. Like, this is not working. This is not working. If we keep attacking stuff, we're going to destroy the whole body.
Yeah.
And the immune system just says, okay, just everybody just stand down. Let's just do nothing. Well, what does nothing mean? It means we're not going to attack mold. We're not going to attack yeast. We're not going to attack viruses. We're not going to attack bacteria. And we're not going to attack and destroy cancer cells.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
And,
This is all making
but,
sense now.
but here's what happens when the spike protein is still there. So it's like this signal where it's like saying attack, and they're saying no, attack, no. And so your immune system is in this state of tension, and it eventually sort of cracks and breaks down because it can't handle both signals at the same time or whatever. When you keep stimulating after it's been like, hey, we're waving off, we don't know what's going on here, it starts making really weird antibodies. All right.
Okay.
And those antibodies can attack your own tissues. And so I believe that the huge waves of autoimmunity that we're seeing are probably due to this chronic immune activation past the point where the body has tried to shut it off but can't.
Mm,
And so it ends up causing the body to make weird antibodies that can actually then attack your own tissues and cause autoimmune disorders. And
wow.
so getting that spike protein out is really critical. And there can be other sources of chronic immune activation, like leaky gut, like other viruses,
Hmm.
like mold exposures in the home. And so I do talk a lot about this, all of this on my website, which is vi-ta.org, which you've been, a proponent of. And because this is where I want people to understand what the root causes might be to what might be going on with them.
So this is making a lot of sense. So my family goes to a naturopath, and she does a lot of blood work for people. And she did a lot of, because she does blood work that's kind of her style. Let's look at your levels, let's get your vitamins up, all the things we need to do. She knows what people's precursors are for certain diseases. And she was telling people don't get the vaccine. People did. And immediately after, like their next appointment with her, they got their blood work done. All of a sudden she's seen they're on the verge, if not already there, autoimmune diseases pop up that she's seen these patients for years and years doing blood work, nothing, they got the vaccine, all of a sudden there's like these autoimmune diseases. So this is making a lot of sense to me. These spike proteins are kind of the root cause of the virus, like you said, kicking in, our body's overworking. And so with that being said, so let's get into, should we assume if somebody's been vaccinated, should they assume their spike protein levels are high, or should they get a test done to confirm that that's actually an issue for them and then do a detox?
So I don't think it hurts to do a detox, because even checking your blood levels doesn't necessarily, your antibody levels doesn't necessarily mean there isn't something else going on. If you want, it can be helpful. Like, it could be helpful to just set your mind at ease, because we know that there was a lot of variability in the batches of vaccine. You may have gotten essentially saline. And so if you come back and you've got, your spike antibody levels are really, really low and you feel healthy, that can give you a peace of mind that may be worth it for you.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if you feel terrible and they're really high, well, then you know that this is likely a root cause that you need to deal with, right?
Yeah.
If you feel terrible and they're really low, well, maybe there are other root causes. Maybe you've got mold in your home, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's just sort of trying to ferret out what is going on with each person. But I think that this is something that is kind of universal. And the reason why is because, again, you can get it post-COVID syndrome. I actually think that, like, some courses of ivermectin, occasionally probably could be helpful as well to people to try to neutralize and clear out subclinical gut infections that really are not being addressed. Unfortunately, we don't have medical people tracking this. One of the things that we haven't talked about is the contamination of the Pfizer vaccine. So to make the vaccines, there were these little circular pieces of DNA called plasmids that had the DNA code for the spike protein. And they grew them up in bacteria. Then they actually, put them in like a test tube and actually made the mRNA off of these DNA. Then they needed to clean that DNA out because guess what? That DNA can integrate into your DNA. That DNA can do all kinds of things in the body. One of the things it can do is hop inside bacteria and then code for the spike protein. So we know that these DNA plasmids were in the Pfizer vaccine at as high of concentrations as the mRNA itself. They also have a nuclear localization code that sends it directly into your cells to integrate into your DNA.
And what is this DNA? Is this from the aborted fetal cells? Is that where this DNA is coming from?
No, this is part of their mechanism for making the vaccine. Okay. It's DNA that codes for the spike protein that was supposed to be made into mRNA, right? It's the mRNA that they wanted because DNA can get into your DNA. So they said, well, we're not going to use DNA because people will freak out. We'll use mRNA, but then they didn't take out the DNA. It's in there, right?
Yeah.
And the DNA can get into your cells. And we've actually found cancer cells that have hundreds of copies of this DNA plasmid, and it's telling your cells to make the spike protein. So it's essentially kind of like the mRNA, but it's way more stable, right?
Okay.
Like all the things that they argued that we made this safer, this goes against all of them. It's not safer.
Yeah.
It's DNA. It can get into your DNA. It can cause mutations in your DNA. It can replicate inside your cells. It can make the spike protein inside your cells. It can hop into bacteria, which then you breathe out. So let's say someone's vaccinated. They got this. It gets inside their bacteria. It starts replicating in their bacteria, and then they breathe out, they touch things, they spit, whatever. You touch it, you put it, now it's in you. Now it's actually replicating in your bacteria. So people could be spreading this. It's basically a self-replicating infectious agent.
Oh, wow.
That was spread by the vaccine.
So it doesn't even, that's where we're going to get into this question of shedding, which I guess it's so really quick before we go down that rabbit hole. What if somebody wants to do a test? Can they just ask their doctor for like a spike protein level test, or do they have to order it specially?
Again, you want to say antibodies. I'd like
antibody.
To check antibodies to spike protein. You might do better if you say, I've heard about post-COVID syndrome. I haven't been feeling well. Like whether you think it's from the vaccine or not, it might be just easier to go that route. But depending on who your doctor is, and just say, I just would like to check my levels to see if I might be actually suffering from post-COVID syndrome. So my antibody levels to the spike protein. And there are different, I think Quest Diagnostics has one. I think there are different companies that will run that test.
Okay, that's good to know. So is there any dangers? So even if somebody didn't get the test and they had the vaccine and they're just like, I'm just going to assume I'm not feeling the healthiest. Is there any dangers to them doing a spike protein detox when it's possibly not an issue for them?
Well, depends on what kind of spike protein detox, right? Because there are a lot of people promoting a lot of things. I personally don't think that everybody should run out and grab a nicotine patch. Now, I'm not saying that it is, this. Every health decision has to be specific to a person and their particular issues, right? And their level of protein and other things like that. So there are a lot of spike protein detoxes out there, and very few of them are really based in really, really good science. I believe the person who has the best science for this that I have seen is Dr. Robin Rose. I had her on Vita. She presented to me. I then simplified it and did some more sort of for the general person who's not super, super sick. Here are some things that integrate portions of her protocol that I think are key. And I also have her full presentation for those who feel very injured that goes into excruciating detail on many different things because it's super complicated actually. And it's not like, in general, I have sort of the take of like, just improve your health and you're going to get above a certain threshold. But getting rid of this spike protein is really complicated. and really hard. And in the sense of you're just not going to like drink more water and it's going to get better.
Right.
Is it helpful to drink more water? Absolutely. But, um, so, I have the key elements that you have to address, whichever products that you choose to use. So I think that that's a really good place to start. Most of the spike detox, without calling anybody out specifically, have just been like kind of throwing something at the wall and hoping it will stick. And I think a lot of people are promoting this without really understanding it.
Yeah, like you said, there's so many detoxes. I mean, if I go to Amazon right now and I type in like spike protein detox, I'll find like a plethora of different pills to just start taking. And that's why I think the key element is to your website is such a resource, Vita, and I'm going to put the tag at the bottom of the screen. But if people are a membership of your organization, that they can go on there and read the details of the spike protein detox and not just simply go to Amazon, buy this thing, take this pill. Because I think the other thing is like, well, people are like, well, how long do I take this? Like, do I just go on for the rest of my life? And that's where
we don't truly know. Like I've been telling people, I don't know, I'd do at least 3 months, but you could get COVID again and then you might need to do it again. It just depends, are you feeling better? Like all the different things. We don't really know because not very many people are actually tracking it. Dr. Robin Rose is with her specific patients and everyone is different. Some people have post-COVID syndrome. Some people are trying to remove the spike protein from the vaccine. So, and then some people, maybe their cells keep making it. Maybe some people, when they get it out, they're done. Everyone's going to be a little different. But what it does have, what you said, what are the key elements you need to look at, right? Instead of just someone saying, you're just assuming they know, like take this, this, and this. Well, I put a rationale behind everything that that is on there. And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not making a recommendation. What I am doing is putting out information that you can then take to your practitioner and discuss with them. And most of the things, especially for lay people, have out there is just basically, we're talking about herbs, we're talking about seaweed, we're talking about things that we're not talking about medicines. Now, Dr. Robin Rose does get into more of those, but then, that type of a detox absolutely has to be done under the care of a practitioner when you're bringing in a lot of medications. In fact, they'd have to be there to prescribe them. So there's different levels, but what you do want is you want a rationale behind each element of what you're doing and why.
So, and if somebody's like hearing this and like, I need some serious detox, what do they need to go to, like a naturopath? Can they go to their general doctor? Like, I mean, I'm just imagining if I went to my general doctor, they would probably look at me like I'm nuts. And so would they need to go to somebody that's more of a naturopath minded doctor for that?
Most likely. And then that's where, again, you could, bring them, some information that you got and say, hey, this is an approach I'd like to take, and I'd like to have you help me with this approach or whatever, or just monitoring your antibody levels and seeing if they come down. There may be other approaches, they need to know about your health. Are there other things involved, right? In anyone, everything is multifactorial.
Right. And that's the difference, is going to my naturopath, just for an advocate for anybody listening, like get yourself a naturopath, because she'll sit down with me for my first appointment and I have to bring in this list of about 10 pages of paper where she asks me lifestyle, stress levels, what's going on here, every little detail about my life. And then when we go in, I have like an hour with her where we discuss everything, even my diet, what I'm eating, what time I stop eating. Do I look at the sunrise? It's like, we go into everything. And contrast that, I had this medical issue. I went to my naturopath for it, and she gave me so much like I really felt like she knew what she was going to do to get me on track. And then I had to go to a general doctor, not as her recommendation, just somebody else recommended me to go to the one. So I might as well. I talked to that person for maybe explain my issue for like a minute. And she's like, oh, I know the answer. And then she's like, I'm like, do you even want to like it was like a wound. I'm like, do you even want to look at the wound? Like, do you even know what's going on? And she's like, I guess I just, sure. And then she just gave me this medication and sent me on my merry way. And I was like, I don't have any trust in you at all. Like, I don't think you know anything about what's going on in my life. And then I pressed her on it. I was like, is this going to fix it? She's like, no, well, we're not really sure. Let's just try it and see if it works. So that's where
these are the experts, right? And we're told that all this other stuff is woo-woo hand waving. And that's where I want to come alongside and say, here is the real rationale. Like, one of the things in my protocol that I talk about is we've got to bind this in the gut. People may have
Hmm.
subclinical infections. This plasmid contamination would be causing it in the gut. And so one of the things I found is something called fucoidan, which is in brown seaweed, that can bind things in the gut, and it is a safe
Mm.
binder as opposed to something like activated charcoal, which can demineralize your body and things like that. So there's a rationale for every step, and so once you understand that, you can work with your practitioner to put together, and then they can kind of monitor you, because I think that that's part of, like, you can say here's the rationale behind something, but someone needs to kind of follow up and say, hey, are you doing this? Are you constipated? I mean, this may sound like a small thing, but if your detox pathways aren't open, you don't want to be pulling stuff out of your cells and have it nowhere to go, right?
Mm.
And so,
Yeah.
and if you are constipated, does it have anything to do with this protocol, or is it a long-standing issue? Like, do you know what I mean? This is why
Yeah.
with someone who knows what your issues are and can say, okay, well, let's try this. Let's hold off on that before until we get this taken care of or whatever.
Yeah. And also just for a doctor to be like truly on your side and not to think you're crazy when you go in and say, I need to start changing my diet. And like, nah, just take this pill. It's like, you
Yeah.
don't know, like, I don't trust you at all. Like, you look at them, they don't look very healthy to me. Um, so now if somebody does this detox, if it won't necessarily take away all the negative effects of getting the COVID vaccine, if I'm gonna, because for example, like you talked about, like somebody could be developing cancer from having got the vaccine. So let's say they do the detox. That doesn't necessarily get rid of the cancer. It probably gives their body a fighting chance. So I guess my question is, somebody does this detox, it doesn't undo everything the COVID vaccine negatively did to their body.
Right. So any detox, and so I'm not going to speak specifically on mine because if it's like some cure, because the FDA will be breathing down my back. And I'm not doing that. I'm just saying here are some principles to think about, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, whenever you're trying to clean garbage out of your body, right? Clean the spike
Yeah.
protein out of your body as much as you can. Yeah, you're giving your body a fighting chance. So the body is incredibly resilient in its ability to overcome things. But of course, yeah, we don't know. These are the things we don't know. We don't have any idea. Is it going to be, you have a much more of a fighting chance if you start pulling garbage out and allowing your cells to work normally. And
Hmm.
in normal cells, they will actually, there's a tripwire that if the cells get too weird, they're told to kill themselves. And so if you reinstitute that tripwire, yes, your cancer could go away. Are you going to reinstitute that tripwire? We don't know. There's so many unknown variables. Your state of health, how long this has been going on, how the cancer or something has progressed, how many mutations it has, how many barriers it's been able to escape in order
Mm.
to sort of grow, because there are a lot of different steps to cancer getting completely out of control, right?
Yeah.
So all of that is going to make, a difference. But I do believe that your body, like loving yourself, loving your body is a key
Hmm.
step, and telling your body that it's worth it,
Mm.
that it's worth trying. Like, I think your cells are listening.
Yeah.
And I think that we're more than just a collection of parts. We're not a carburetor that is broken and we need to fix. We're like this whole consciousness, and your cells have consciousness as well.
Yeah. Well, the way too you're even answering these questions, it just paints the picture as we know that our bodies are so unique and you can't just we're not a one size fits all. There's so many different factors at play to even the same illness that somebody else is experiencing. And I think that's the argument against the COVID, the vaccine in general is, and so the childhood vaccines is that we're just looking at people as a one size fits all and injecting everybody and not really considering the individual, what's their genetic makeup, what's their current illness that they're maybe struggling with, and this would put them over the edge. So I love the way you're answering these questions because it just reaffirms that we need to treat our bodies as individuals as we are actually individuals. So,
Right.
yeah.
And I think that gets to, we are at a time when we can do individualized medicine. Like, everyone goes and gets a 23andMe ancestral. When you do that, they do a whole bunch of variants of different different proteins and enzymes in your body that tell you what your genetic predispositions are. Do you have histamine issues? Do you have problems making glutathione? Do you have problems with vitamin D? So a lot of things that directly affect your health, we can now know what your predispositions are and how to compensate for those once you understand that. So we're really at a place in individualized medicine, and we understand so much more, like about the immune system, about the gut brain axis, and all of these things, that we're in a position to support the body instead of, like, it's like, medicine wants to come in and just block things. It's like, we don't want you to get foot cancer, so we're just gonna cut off your foot. You're like,
Yeah, that's a
I just
solution.
think there's a better way, like I like my foot, so we really have to start looking at dysfunction as a lack of health, and we have the tools to support health. And once your
Mhm.
body comes into a more optimal state, it has the answers itself, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things, you have cancer, your body is designed to hunt out and destroy that. So the question is, why is the cancer being masked? What's feeding it? And some of these actually also have to do psychologically, because your brain is the most important chemical factory in the universe. And so it's making chemicals that are affecting your immune system and affecting all these signaling pathways every day, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So, there's a correlation between anger and cancer and repressed emotion and cancer. So those, you can say, oh, that's not real, but your body's making chemicals in response to those emotions,
Right.
right?
Have you ever looked into the science of like water and the effects water has on emotion? I'm curious to
Well,
know if
it's
you've
the
you've gone down
effect
that rabbit hole.
emotion has on water, right? So
Yeah.
structured water, in fact, I'm hoping to have someone do a seminar in Vita very soon on structured water. It appears water is really interesting, and it can hold information. And I do believe that a lot of the problems when our systems actually decline, it's a breakdown in the structure of water. So if you think about like a battery or something, there are electrolytes in your water. Things like fucoidin from seaweed actually help structure the water. Sulfur, sulfates that line your blood vessels and stuff help structure the water, and they produce
Mhm.
these gradients so that, like, your blood vessels are negative and the blood cells negative, so that they repel each other so they don't clump up. So there's a lot to the electromagnetic gradient that is
Mm.
set up in your body, and water plays a central role in that. And I think a lot of our biochemical processes are to maintain that. And when they
Yeah.
break down, then you're not able to maintain that. But there are other ways, like people can take an Epsom salt bath. Someone that I know was vaccine injured, and they said, I'm having all of these little red spots everywhere. I said, you're microhemorrhaging. She said, I keep getting these zaps everywhere. I said, yes, you're actually short circuiting because your cells are not communicating well. And she's like, oh, is that why when I sit in an Epsom salt bath that stops? I'm like, yep. So I mean, this is
Wow.
electrical currents. This is, there's so much to
There's
this.
so
So
much, right?
yeah, and so, I mean, that
Yeah.
is my mission, is to try to, like, sort of, I mean, it's a lifetime thing, but, like, to sort of to change our paradigm of health. Change
Yeah.
the paradigm so that we are supporting the body at its root, at the core functionality of what makes us function and what makes us healthy. And once you get that straightened out, it's kind of like the measles. Well, take a dose of vitamin A, if,
Yeah.
make sure your vitamin A is sufficient when measles is coming around. Make sure your immune system is sufficient. What we've done now is we've kind of whacked out everybody's immune system with so many vaccinations. And
Mhm.
the data is showing that very clearly, that a lot of the childhood schedule vaccines dysregulate the immune system and cause and that all cause mortality is higher
Yeah.
in those, because their immune system is not working optimally. And then when someone gets measles and gets really sick, we say, well, it's because they weren't vaccinated. But in fact, a lot of
Yeah.
times they were vaccinated, right? Their
Yeah.
immune system isn't functioning properly.
Yeah.
So these are things that we need to look at again. On We know more how to support the immune system in the body naturally, and how to support that instead of trying to prevent disease, how to nurture optimal health.
Yeah. Our bodies are so uniquely designed and I think divinely designed that they do naturally fight off um, I mean, that's what, otherwise we would have died a long time ago as a species. And we've just been destroying our bodies with blue light and with everything. And like you had your episode about Wi-Fi. So I've got to reevaluate my Wi-Fi usage. It's just like, man, we're just doing everything we can to just obliterate our health. And then we go to doctors who don't know anything about health and be like, just give me a pill. And we wonder why we're having such a problem. So we talked about, I'm so glad that these two conversations are coming intertwined, because vaccine shedding is something I keep seeing come up in all my Facebook group pages for vaccine free minded people. And there was mothers on there that were asking, when should my unvaccinated child, how long should I prevent my child from being around a recently vaccinated person? And I was just thinking, my gosh, like, this is just, life is getting so hard. How can I possibly do that? I mean, yes, if I knew a family member was vaccinated, I could say, don't come around for so many days, but just going out in life, like you said, coughing, like, like inhale this and receive. So is vaccine shedding like a real concern for us? And if it is, what do we do to just keep living life and still be healthy?
So, for the COVID vaccine, and even for COVID itself, or for the contamination, the shedding is really real. Now, these are nano-sized particles. So when someone, especially with the mRNA technology, is vaccinated, it's going to be oozing out of their skin, on their breath, their sexual organ. It's just going to be in everything. It's going to, just be coming off of their body. You are going to be passively vaccinated by being near them. So in that case, if someone's getting their booster, I would kind of avoid them for at least a couple of weeks until it at least subsides somewhat. Obviously, I wouldn't be having any kind of close, intimate relations with someone for that time, because all of that is very, very inflammatory. So, and because of the contamination, that's another layer of what you could call shedding, right? These are just words, it's semantics. For the childhood schedule, that's very, very different. So the only vaccines that will really shed are going to be the live viral vaccines. So we're talking MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella. Honestly, it's not something I would be concerned about. It's an attenuated virus. If your child is exposed to it, their body will deal with it just fine. Okay. So I don't really see that it's an issue. If you have a child that's severely immunocompromised or has cancer, sometimes they say that then you would want to avoid that kind of a thing. I don't know that there's really good data on that, but obviously each person needs to make their own personal choice.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I'm just like, how am I supposed to go about life? But the COVID one, it sounds like that's where the real issue is. And then that just makes me think of one, let's say somebody's married to somebody that got the vaccine, and obviously they're in a close, intimate relationship with them. And so does that person now need to consider that isn't vaccinated, but their spouse was? Or even I'm thinking about nurses who are constantly around people who have just been vaccinated, and their patients and their coworkers. Do people that haven't been vaccinated but are constantly, or even have been married, or whatever the experience may be, around somebody that's gotten the COVID vaccine, do they need to look at their spike protein levels or the antibodies like we mentioned?
Absolutely, because some of these things are transmissible. The plasmid contamination is a transmissible infectious agent, right? So you may now have it. And if they are secreting whether it's the vaccine or whatever, in their body fluids, extremely inflammatory. I know you talked to Dr. James Thorpe, who found women who were unvaccinated but had relations with their spouse that were hemorrhaging, because it's so inflammatory. So I would say, for that, a barrier method for, I would say, up to 2 years, 2 to 3 years. We don't really know, but I would say a long time, right? To protect your reproductive organs, because once inflammation causes scarring and stuff like that, you may never get your reproductive health back. Now, of course, you're also interacting with them. And so this is where things like something like fucoidan that could bind it in the gut, something like occasionally taking a course of ivermectin could potentially really, clear the body, help reduce loads. If you are in constant contact with people, you need to periodically look at, is your body holding up under this, or do you need to do some cleanses or address these various issues? And again, you need to look at what the various issues are, so you can say, okay, this is how I'm going to address this. That's not a decision for me to make or recommend. I'm not a medical I'm not a doctor, right?
Right.
But for you to look and then talk to your doctor and then to have that practitioner so you can say, well, I tried this and it worked well or it didn't or, whatever it is.
Yeah. So somebody's married to somebody that had the vaccine and they're hearing this. And so if their spouse does this detox or gets the spike protein levels back in check, is that concern for the other spouse still there?
Well, I would do
Or
it together because again, some of
yeah.
these things it could be even just post-COVID. It might not even be the vaccine for you as a couple. It could be a subclinical gut infection, which you're going to spread to one another, or the
Wow.
contamination, which is an infective agent, right?
Yeah.
So I would do it together or as a family because of the possibility the virus itself is infective, and so is the plasmid contamination, right?
Mm.
So, and then, check your antibody levels. If everybody's
Yeah.
antibody levels are really low and everybody's feeling fine, well, maybe you don't need to do that. But most of the things you'd be doing are health promoting anyway. So it's not
Yeah.
like some weird, thing.
Yeah. And so this is when I say safe for children, there's like we talked about, have a medical person, especially if you're doing one of these severe ones. But children should also be, if they've had the vaccine or like you said, were around their family that had the vaccine, they should also be considered for doing one of these detoxes. Is that right?
Okay, so again, I'm not trying to give medical advice.
Right. I keep
What I am
asking you
saying is
to.
that yes, we should be concerned and we should be asking how we can bind the virus in the gut, because kids seem to really, really struggle with inflammation and leaky gut. So
Mm,
and finding products that contain things that can really support their health and support. So what I want to say is support their body in clearing it, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. My last question is gonna be, you keep mentioning the seaweed. Tell me about this seaweed. So you said brown seaweed? Is that all seaweed? I don't know much about seaweed.
No.
I just,
So there's
yeah.
different seaweeds, and there's a couple of different types of seaweeds that this is found in. It's called fucoidon, and it's an element. It's a sulfated polysaccharide,
Mhm.
and there's actually a paper that came out in Nature in 2020 that showed how tightly it bound to the spike protein.
Mm.
And basically, the implications, if we had all just spread some brown seaweed amongst ourselves, that it could have really prevented the spread of COVID. But
Wait, when you say around, like exteriorly, or do we need to consume
no,
it?
like
What do we do with the
consuming it.
seaweed?
Yeah, yeah. And the fucoidin is isolated from it. They actually use the fucoidin, which is an isolate. It's a sulfated
Okay.
polysaccharide. Think of it as like a kind of like a gel, like you would think of like a collagen as a gel, like it forms a structure,
Okay.
but this is one that's plant-based, right? And
Okay.
so it's not collagen, it's plant-based, but it forms like a gel, like if you think of sea moss and things like
Yeah.
that. So bladderwrack is one of the brown seaweeds that has a very, very high level of fucoidin in it. And
Okay.
so, but some of the prebiotics, things that feed your gut bacteria, have fucoidin in it because it is actually great for your gut microbiome. It binds viruses. It'll even bind aberrant cancer cells. It's protective against cancer. And so it really doesn't have a downside
Okay.
in terms of, obviously everyone's individual. If you have SIBO, which is a bad overgrowth of bacteria, maybe it's not right for you. But for most people, it's going to bind a lot of bad stuff in the gut and also feed the microbiome in a positive way. And so the data on it were actually astounding. And what I wanted was a safe binder in the gut, especially,
Mm.
if someone like a child was going to take it, where we don't
Yeah.
have to worry about like an activated charcoal where we're going to, bind minerals and take them out. Because if this is circulating, if the virus is circulating, or if these infective agents from the contamination are circulating, we want to
Yeah.
make sure to keep binding that continually. So I wanted
Yeah.
something that was safe for continual use. And what I found is there are already some gut products on the market, usually marketed as a prebiotic, that have this fucoidin in there. And some of them are for children, so you don't have to like reinvent the wheel, right?
So is this like a pill or is this like a snack? What, how do you, because I'm imagining when you said
Yeah,
seaweed,
so
like the dry seaweed at the store, you could just snack on, but is this different?
most of the time, like some people have it ground up seaweed in a pill. Other people have it, the fucoidin has been isolated by a company and then put in like a drink mix. Like
Okay.
the company I'm a consultant for has a drink mix where it's actually, it has fucoidin and some other things that are prebiotics. And this was already available pre-COVID. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
they know how good it is for the gut and the microbiome, and it, helps with leaky gut and things like that or whatever.
Okay. So I need to get this drink. That sounds
And go
amazing.
away.
I'm like, how can we implement this as a snack, like a chip or something? I'm just thinking about all the little things I try to put around my house that my kids are snacking on in a healthy way and not necessarily like,
Mhm.
let's get a candy and just let's try to keep healthy snacks. So I need to look at this drink because that sounds like a good thing for my kids just to like if they want a little treat to
Yeah,
take.
absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, before we end it, can you tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can find these detoxes we talked about, and just a little bit more about your organization?
Sure. So, first of all, you can find me. I do a lot of posts on Instagram at Epigenetic Healing. I know I was trying to be stealth, but now everyone knows who I am. Epigenetic Healing. I'm on Facebook at Christina Parks, and I'm on Telegram at Dr. Christina Parks, and I'm on um, X at, I think it's at cparks1. So, but my site is VITA, the Vaccine Injury Teaching Alliance. It's vi-ta.org, vi-ta.org. And there are a lot of free pages, informational pages for information on vaccines that I really want you guys to know and to share. And then for members, we have like bi-monthly presentations, and then you always have access to those. So those are uploaded to the site, and so that you can watch the recording, because not everyone, usually our presentations are on Tuesday nights. The benefit of joining that is then you can ask questions in an interactive way with me or other practitioners. But then if you just don't have time, that's your Bible study night or whatever, they're always uploaded to the site for you to watch later. I often clip them and organize them so that you can kind of go through it and watch things like about our nutritional healing, about, cholesterol and fats, 10 or 15 minutes at a time without, having to take in a whole 2-hour episode or whatever. So the idea is that to really look at health differently. My company is called New Health Paradigms, and the idea is to help people understand their bodies and their health from a different perspective that has kind of a root cause way of looking at things. And so this is my mission, right? And so it's $13 a month because I'm not here to try to charge mothers of vaccine injured children like, all this money they can't afford. But what I do have a heart for is re-educating us all so that we can become empowered to live healthier lives. And so that's why I do this. Every time I ask something, what I ask is like, what do I feel that people most need to know right now?
Right.
And so then I either find somebody to address that or I address it myself.
And I just have to say that your website is just packed with so much knowledge, and there's so much, just vaccines alone, there's so much information. Like you have the inserts there, you have everything's broken down and simplified. It's just such a powerful resource, like you said, for health, not just for vaccines, but for health in general. Like we talked about, you did it recently, like a deep dive on a Wi-Fi, which, like I said, is scaring my home right now. And I'm like, we're turning off the Wi-Fi when we're sleeping. So just when I think I'm healthy, you put something out there, and I'm like, I got to adjust it. So I just can't express more how many people need to go to your organization, go to your website, sign up. And this isn't just a plug because I actually like highly respect you, and I want to see this organization do better, because not better. I want to see it, more people learn about it, because it's just such a resource that I think would benefit so many lives. Let's just keep it going. Well, thank you again. Yeah,
I
go
want
ahead.
to say that, and the idea is, and I'm my own, like, I always remind myself, like, I'll be talking to my sister and I stopped taking that. I need to start taking, I just did a piece recently on vitamin D on cod liver oil, right?
Yeah.
And like people popped in with all kinds of anecdotes and whatnot. But it's a reminder to me too. I needed the reminder from the Wi-Fi. It's like, I know here, but we can only integrate changes one step at a time into our lifestyle. So what I want to do is help you educate yourself at your own pace. There's no one saying you have to watch these 42 presentations by the end of next week.
Or you're going to die.
Yeah, like, But there's a page called Healing, Where Do I Begin? And a lot of it is about how to detox your kitchen. It has links to different products that somebody else has vetted, so you don't have to do all the work, and you can download those PDFs. And so the idea is to take it one step at a time and to find what intuitively resonates for you. So some of the things, like maybe your child is really having psychological problems and you see something on pandas or pans, which can cause children to have psychological problems. You want to watch that. Maybe you feel like it's yeast, so you feel like you need to see that one. Like, let your intuition guide you, because your unconscious brain is taking in way more information than you are consciously aware of, to the resource that might guide you to what is needed for you, right? Not that you have to know all of this overnight, but to see what resonates and be like, okay, where do I want to begin? What hits me? Which do I want to watch first? And then what do I think I might want to look at next?
And that's just such a great way to look at it, because we can get, once people start to go down like the crunchy route, it seems really overwhelming. Like we talked about with the shedding, people are like, do I need to lock myself inside for 30 days or keep family members away? It's just, that's why, again, your website's such a good resource, because we can go to it and just look up these questions, look up how, okay, this came into my life today, or I'm looking at my kitchen and I'm learning that maybe these pans, maybe what I'm storing my food in, maybe the food I'm eating, like, can we start with one category of food? Like, let's look at meats. And just like you said, your website's such a resource for just when you're ready to tackle that area in your life, you have all those resources there. And people don't feel like they need a background in science to uncover or watch TikToks and get false information. They can just go to your resource and just, you have it all simplified.
That's where it is, especially with things like, diabetes, with fasting, with fats in your foods. Like, people want credible information. People have a lot of questions. And so I'm trying to answer those questions one at a time and just kind of get it out there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate again your time. It's so, every time I have you on, this is our second time. It's such a joy, and I think that we're going to make some impact with this one. Well, thank you again for your time. I appreciate it, Dr. Parks.
Thank you.